Dawn broke over the forest, painting the purple leaves with golden light. Jack moved carefully along a thick branch, helping Blue maintain her balance. They had spent the night traveling through the treetops, stopping only when necessary. Below them, they could occasionally spot the night stalkers, their black scales blending with the shadows. "Your method of travel is unexpected," Blue communicated, her mental voice tinged with fascination. "My people would have built an anti-gravity device or called for orbital rescue." Jack helped her across a gap between trees. Sometimes the simple solution is the best solution. No power cells to run out, no signals for the stalkers to track. He paused, checking their direction with a small compass. "Though I wouldn't mind one of those anti-gravity devices right about now." Blue's crystalline skin glowed brighter in what Jack had learned was amusement. Her leg was slowly healing. The transparent skin had begun knitting itself back together, though the lights beneath still flickered with pain. A screech from below made them freeze. One of the night stalkers had spotted them, and was now alerting its pack. The creature reared up on its hind legs, its claws scoring deep marks in the tree trunk as it tried to climb. "They're learning," Jack muttered. "Time for that offense I mentioned." He pulled out a length of rope and several small packages from his backpack. Blue watched curiously as he began tying them to arrows. "What are those?" "Remember how I said your bioluminescence attracts them?" Jack grinned. "Well, I've been collecting those glowing fungi we passed, mixed with some basic chemicals from my med kit." He held up one of the packages. It glowed with the same blue light as Blue's skin. Understanding dawned in her silver eyes. A distraction. Better. Jack knocked an arrow. A trap. He fired 3 arrows in quick succession, each landing in different spots on the forest floor. The packages burst on impact, spreading glowing spores in wide circles. The night stalkers immediately turned toward the new light sources, their hunting instincts overriding their focus on Blue. "Now for part 2, Jack said, pulling out his knife and a small metal canister. "You might want to cover your ears, or whatever you hear with." He struck the knife against the canister, creating a shower of sparks that ignited the contents. Then he threw it down into the middle of the confused pack. The explosion wasn't large, but the flash and bang were impressive. The night stalkers scattered, screeching in panic. In their confusion, 2 of them collided violently, while another ran headfirst into a tree. "A simple mixture of colony cleaning supplies," Jack explained to an amazed Blue. "Makes a nice flashbang when you need one." "They'll be back, but with ringing ears and spotty vision." "You created weapons from cleaning supplies." Blue's mental voice was a mix of horror and admiration. "How did you know how to do this?" Jack shrugged, already moving them to a new position. "Humans have a long history of turning everyday things into tools of survival. Plus, I read a lot of old military manuals when I was younger. You'd be surprised what you can learn from books." They traveled for another hour before Jack found what he was looking for, a cluster of giant leaves that collected water. He helped Blue settle into a natural cradle formed by several branches. "Rest here," he said, checking her leg. The healing was progressing, but slowly. "I need to set up some more surprises for our friends down there." Blue caught his arm with her crystalline hand. The touch sent a slight tingle through his skin. "My people were wrong about humans," she said. "We saw your limited technology and assumed you were simple. But you show that intelligence comes in many forms." Jack smiled. "That's the thing about humans, Blue. We're too stubborn to accept limitations. If we can't go through an obstacle, we go around it. If we can't go around it, we figure out how to use it. Speaking of which," he pointed to some vines hanging nearby. "Those look strong enough to support a weight, don't you think?" Blue's lights pulsed with curiosity. "What are you planning?" "Well," Jack said, pulling out his knife again, "let me tell you about an old Earth trick called a snare trap. I think it's time we taught these night stalkers why humans were Earth's apex predators." The forest echoed with distant howls as the pack regrouped, but this time, Jack's smile had an edge to it. The hunters were about to become the hunted. The first night stalker burst through the bushes like a nightmare made real. In the fading light, its black scales gleamed, and its 3 rows of teeth glinted. The creature stood taller than a horse, with 6 powerful legs and a whip-like tail. Jack's arrow flew true, striking the beast in the soft spot beneath its jaw. The night stalker screamed, a sound like metal grinding on metal, and stumbled backward. "Time to go," Jack said, quickly but gently lifting the alien woman. She was surprisingly light, like lifting a child. Her crystalline skin felt warm to the touch, and the patterns of light beneath it pulsed faster. More howls echoed through the forest. The injured night stalker's cries had called its pack. The alien's mental voice touched his mind again. "I am Blue Star Wanderer. Blue. My research team. 3 days walk north. Must warn them." 3 days. Jack adjusted his grip on her as he started moving. "We've got about 3 minutes before that pack catches up." First rule of survival: deal with the immediate threat. He could hear the night stalkers crashing through the undergrowth behind them. These beasts were smart. They were trying to circle around and cut off escape routes. Blue's lights flickered in what Jack guessed was fear. "They hunt by light. My bioluminescence attracts them. Leave me. Save yourself." Jack actually laughed as he ducked under a low branch. "Sorry, Mom, but humans have this annoying habit of not leaving people behind." Second rule of survival: stick together. He felt her confusion through their strange mental link. "Your species is not logical. You risk death for unknown alien." "Yeah, we get that a lot." Jack skidded down a steep slope, using his body to shield Blue from impact. "But it's worked out pretty well for us so far." A night stalker leaped out from behind a tree ahead of them. Jack spun, keeping Blue away from its snapping jaws. The movement brought them to the edge of a fast-moving stream. "Hold tight," he warned, then jumped. The icy water shocked his system, but Jack had chosen this spot for a reason. The current here was strong enough to carry them downstream quickly, but not so strong it would drown them. Most importantly, the water would hide their scent and Blue's glowing trail. They surfaced 30 yards downstream. Jack pulled them toward a low-hanging branch and grabbed it, muscles straining as he lifted Blue out of the water first, then hauled himself up. Above them, they could hear the night stalkers pacing along the riverbank, confused by the disappeared trail. Jack helped Blue settle onto a wide branch, noticing how her leg was definitely broken. "You're quick thinking." Blue's mental voice seemed impressed. "You knew water would confuse them." Third rule of survival: Jack whispered, wringing out his shirt, "use the environment. Every terrain has advantages if you know how to use them." Blue's silver eyes studied him intently. "My species thought humans were primitive. We observed your colony. No quantum drives. No telepathy. No molecular reconstruction." "Yeah, well," Jack checked his bow for damage. "Sometimes primitive works pretty well." "How's that leg?" "Healing slowly. My body repairs itself, but..." She gestured at the darkness around them. "Night stalkers will not give up. They are apex predators of this world. Once they choose prey, they hunt for days." Jack nodded grimly. "Figured as much. Like Earth's wolves, but nastier. We need to keep moving." He looked north. "You said your research team is 3 days away." "Yes. They study ruins of ancient civilization. Night stalkers attacked our transport. I was separated. And they're probably facing the same threat you are." Jack started formulating a plan. "Okay, here's what we'll do. We'll rest here until the stalkers spread out to search. Then we'll head north, but not on the ground." Blue's lights pulsed questioningly. "Not on ground." Jack grinned, patting the tree trunk. Fourth rule of survival: if you can't walk, climb. These purple leaf trees connect for miles. We'll travel through the canopy. Slower than walking, but safer. You continue to surprise me, human Jack. Just Jack is fine. He checked the darkness again. "And trust me, Blue, The surprises are just getting started, because there's one more rule of survival you should know. What is that? When you're being hunted, Jack's grin turned fierce. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense, and I've got a few ideas about how to turn the tables on our scaly friends down there. The night stalkers howled in the distance, but this time, Jack wasn't worried. He had a plan, and if there was one thing humans did well, it was surviving against the odds. Jack wiped the sweat from his forehead as he studied the strange tracks in the soft mud. After 5 years as a wilderness guide on Earth, and 2 more on this alien world, he had never seen anything like these marks. They glowed faintly in the dimming light, like someone had spilled blue paint that refused to dry. The forest around him grew darker as the planet's twin suns sank behind the purple-leafed trees. The air felt heavy with the sweet smell of the local flowers, mixed with something else, something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. The scent reminded him of copper and ozone, like the air before a lightning storm. "Control, this is Jack." He spoke into his wrist communicator. "I'm tracking something unusual in Sector 7. Requesting permission to investigate." The radio crackled. "Negative, Guide Smith. Night patrol is too dangerous. Return to base." Jack looked at the glowing tracks again. They were fresh, maybe an hour old at most. Next to them, he spotted larger tracks that made his blood run cold, the massive 3-toed prints of the planet's apex predators. The locals called them night stalkers, and they hunted in packs. He keyed his radio again. "Copy that, Control. Heading back now." But he didn't move. The glowing tracks showed signs of dragging, like whatever made them was injured. And those predator tracks, they were following the glowing trail. "Sorry, Control," he muttered, switching off his radio, "but something needs help out there." Jack pulled his bow from his shoulder, a simple wooden recurve bow that had earned him plenty of jokes from the colony's security teams with their fancy pulse rifles. But unlike their high-tech weapons, his bow never ran out of power cells, and the arrows were silent. He followed the tracks deeper into the forest, moving as quietly as 20 years of hunting experience had taught him. The ground sloped down into a small valley, and the glowing trail grew brighter. Whatever was leaving these marks was close. A sound caught his attention, a soft, musical hum that seemed to pulse with light. Jack crouched behind a fallen tree and peered over it. In a small clearing ahead lay something. No, someone he had never seen before. It looked like a young woman, but her skin was semi-transparent, like crystal, with patterns of light flowing beneath it. She lay motionless, her leg bent at an awkward angle. The ground around her glowed with the same blue light he'd been following. Jack's breath caught in his throat. An alien. A real, living alien. In the 2 years since humans had started colonizing this world, they'd found ruins and artifacts of an ancient civilization, but never any living aliens. A distant howl made him snap his head around. The night stalkers were closing in. He could see their tracks circling the clearing. At least 6 of them, maybe more. They were hunting. Colony protocol was crystal clear. No contact with alien life forms. Return to base and report immediately. Let the xenobiologists handle it. Another howl, closer this time. The alien's lights pulsed weakly. "Well," Jack muttered, pulling an arrow from his quiver. Rules were made to be broken. He stepped into the clearing and knelt beside the alien woman. Up close, he could see delicate patterns swirling under her crystalline skin, like moving tattoos made of starlight. Her eyes opened suddenly. They were completely silver, with no pupils or iris. She made a sound like wind chimes in a breeze, and a soft blue light emerged from a device on her wrist, scanning him. "Easy there," Jack said gently, holding up his empty hand. "I'm here to help." The device on her wrist hummed, and then he heard words in his mind, as if carried on a wave of music. "The beasts. They come." "I know," Jack said, noting how the howls were getting closer. "Can you walk?" She tried to move and made a sound like breaking glass, clearly in pain. The lights under her skin flickered. Jack heard heavy footsteps in the underbrush. The night stalkers were almost here. He had seconds to make a decision. Follow protocol and retreat, or risk everything to save someone who might be the first contact between humanity and an advanced alien race. He smiled grimly and drew his bow. "Well, Mom," he said, "looks like you're about to see why humans survived on Earth long enough to reach the stars." The bushes at the edge of the clearing began to rustle. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the trees as Jack and Blue reached a high ridge. Below them stretched a massive canyon, its walls rising like stone teeth from the forest floor. Jack pulled out his binoculars, scanning the area carefully. There, Blue's mental voice was stronger now, her leg almost healed. She pointed toward a cluster of ancient ruins half hidden by vegetation. "My research team's last location." Through his binoculars, Jack could see movement around the ruins. More crystalline figures like Blue, their skin glowing with various colors, were gathered inside what looked like a defensive circle. Around them, dark shapes moved through the underbrush. More night stalkers. "I count at least 12 stalkers," Jack said grimly. "They've got your people surrounded." Blue's lights pulsed with worry. "My team's energy weapons will soon lose power. They cannot hold out much longer." She turned her silver eyes to Jack. "The night stalkers. They're behaving strangely. On previous expeditions, they never showed such coordinated hunting patterns." Jack watched as 2 stalkers tried to rush the aliens' position from different directions. The timing was too perfect to be random. "They're learning," he said. "Each failed attack teaches them something new. They figured out your weapon's range, your blind spots." "Impossible," Blue protested. "They're just animals." "So were wolves on Earth. Once." Jack put away his binoculars. "But they learned to hunt in packs, to coordinate, to adapt. These stalkers, they're doing the same thing, but faster. Maybe something about your technology, your presence, is accelerating their evolution." A distant explosion lit up the canyon as the trapped researchers repelled another attack. The stalkers retreated, but Jack noticed they didn't retreat far. "See that?" He pointed. "They're staying just out of weapon range. They're wearing your people down, waiting for their power cells to die. Then they'll attack from all sides at once." Blue's lights dimmed with realization. "Like they tried with me." "Exactly." Jack began unpacking his remaining supplies. "But that's going to be their weakness. They think they're the smartest hunters in this forest." He grinned. Time to prove them wrong. He laid out his remaining supplies. Rope, his last few arrows, the glowing fungus packets, some medical supplies, and Blue's partially repaired communication device. "Your device," he said. "Can it still emit that sound pulse you used to talk to me when we first met?" "Yes, but at very short range now." "Perfect." Jack began mixing chemicals from his med kit with the fungus. "Here's what they don't understand about humans. We learned to hunt by studying predators. Every predator has patterns, and every pattern can be turned into a trap." He worked quickly, explaining his plan to Blue. Her lights pulsed faster as she understood. "The risk," she started, "is necessary," Jack finished. "Your people are almost out of power. We've got one shot at this." They worked together for the next hour, Jack's primitive tools combining with Blue's damaged but advanced technology. As they finished, the sun began to set, casting red light across the canyon. "They'll attack at full dark," Jack said, checking his makeshift equipment one last time. "When they think your people's lights will give them the best targets." Blue touched his arm again, sending that now familiar tingle through his skin. "You don't have to do this. These are not your people." Jack checked his bowstring. "Maybe not. But back on Earth, humans learned something important. We survived not because we were the strongest or fastest, but because we looked out for each other. All of us. Even strangers." He smiled at her. "Besides, I've got a reputation to maintain. Can't have your people thinking humans are primitive, right?" A chorus of howls echoed through the canyon. The Night Stalkers were calling to each other, preparing for their final attack. "They think they got it all figured out," Jack said, standing up. "They think they know exactly how their prey will react." He shouldered his bow and checked his knife. Time to show them what happens when you corner a human. Blue's lights pulsed with worry, but also determination. "Together." Jack nodded. "Together. Because there's one last thing these stalkers need to learn about humans." He started down toward the canyon floor, moving silently through the growing darkness. "We don't just survive. We turn the tables." Behind them, the twin suns set completely, plunging the canyon into darkness. The hunt was about to begin, but this time, the prey was ready. Night had fully claimed the canyon when Jack and Blue reached the forest floor. The only lights came from the trap research team's glowing forms in the distance and the scattered stars above. Perfect hunting conditions for both predator and prey. "Your people need to know the plan," Jack whispered, checking the wind direction. "Can you reach them from here?" Blue's lights dimmed to their lowest setting as she concentrated. Her damaged communicator hummed softly. "Yes, they receive my thoughts. They are confused about your presence. Tell them to keep their lights bright," Jack said, laying out his modified arrows. "Make themselves perfect targets. When the stalkers attack, that's when everything changes." He had spent the last hour setting up a complex network of ropes and triggers throughout the surrounding trees, each rope connected to packets of the glowing fungus, positioned carefully to create a maze of light and shadow when activated. "My people are scientists, not warriors," Blue transmitted. "They fear your plan is too dangerous." Jack checked his last few normal arrows. "Sometimes the best science comes from taking risks. Tell them to trust the primitive human." He grinned in the darkness. "After all, we managed to reach the stars without quantum drives." A distant roar echoed through the canyon. The Night Stalkers were beginning their final approach. Jack could see their shadows moving through the underbrush, their scales reflecting the faint light from Blue's people. "Remember," Jack said, "when I give the signal, everyone needs to move exactly as planned. One mistake and we become food." Blue finished. Her mental voice carried a hint of dark humor. "You are enjoying this, aren't you?" "Little bit," Jack admitted, nocking an arrow. "There's something satisfying about outsmarting a predator that thinks it's outsmarted you." He pointed to a large tree near the research team. "Get ready to move to that position. And Blue, be careful. You as well, Jack." Her use of his name in her thoughts carried a warmth that made his heart skip a beat. The Night Stalkers were moving closer now, their massive forms becoming clearer in the darkness. Jack counted 14 of them. The entire pack had gathered for this final hunt. They moved with terrifying coordination, each beast taking up a strategic position around the trap researchers. Jack waited until the lead stalker was perfectly positioned. Then he loosed his first arrow. The modified arrow struck the ground near the beast, exploding in a burst of bright blue light. The fungal spores spread through the air, creating a glowing cloud. The Night Stalkers reacted instantly, their hunting instincts drawing them toward the light. "Now," Jack shouted, firing more arrows in rapid succession. Each one burst in a different location, creating a complex pattern of glowing spots across the forest floor. Blue's people moved as one, rushing toward their designated positions. The Night Stalkers, confused by the multiple light sources, began snapping and snarling at the air around them. Jack triggered the rope systems. More fungal packets dropped from above, creating curtains of blue light. The forest floor became a maze of glowing patterns, completely disrupting the stalkers' hunting strategy. "Phase 2, Jack called out, running to his next position. He could see Blue's people taking up their places, their natural bioluminescence adding to the confusing light show. The Night Stalkers were now fully disoriented, their perfect hunting formation broken. Some chased false lights, others spun in circles, unable to determine which lights were prey and which were decoys. "Your people ready?" Jack asked Blue through their mental link. "Yes." though they still think this plan is insane. Best plans usually are. Jack pulled out his last special arrow, this one carrying a mixture of chemicals that would create the biggest bang yet. Time to show these beasts why humans are the galaxy's ultimate survivors. He drew back his bow, aiming at the center of the confused pack. The Night Stalkers had finally figured out something was wrong, but it was too late. Their own hunting instincts had become their weakness. Ready. Jack breathed out slowly, his aim steady. Ready. The lead stalker looked up, its yellow eyes meeting Jack's in the darkness. For a moment, predator recognized predator, but only one of them was smiling. Now, Jack released the arrow, setting in motion the final phase of their desperate plan. The real hunt was about to begin. Jack's final arrow struck the ground between the Night Stalkers, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. Then the world exploded into chaos. The chemical mixture erupted with a deafening boom and a blinding flash, far more powerful than his earlier devices. The Night Stalkers screamed in pain and confusion as their sensitive eyes were overwhelmed. At the same time, Blue's people activated their remaining power cells, creating a synchronized pulse of energy that rippled through the air. Phase 3. Jack shouted, already moving. The trap was sprung, but now came the dangerous part. The Night Stalkers, blinded and deafened, did exactly what Jack had predicted. They fell back on pure instinct. They began charging wildly at any movement, any light they could still see through their dazzled eyes. But instead of finding easy prey, they found only empty air and more confusion. Blue's voice touched his mind. They're splitting up, just as you said they would. Jack ran through the maze of glowing fungus lights, deliberately making noise. A Night Stalker turned toward him, its yellow eyes unfocused but still deadly. It charged exactly as he wanted. At the last second, Jack dove to the side. The beast, unable to stop its charge, ran straight into one of his rope traps. The strong vines, engineered by Blue using her remaining tech to be even stronger, snapped tight around its legs. The massive predator crashed to the ground with a roar that shook the trees. One down, Jack called out, already moving to his next position. Keep them confused. Blue's people performed their roles perfectly, using their bioluminescence to create moving patterns of light that drew the stalkers into more traps. 2 more beasts went down, tangled in the reinforced vines. But the Night Stalkers were learning, even now. The lead beast, the largest of the pack, stopped its blind charging, its eyes fixed on Jack, recognizing him as the source of its troubles. "Oh," Jack muttered. "Blue, we've got a problem." The massive stalker leaped, covering an impossible distance. Jack rolled, feeling the wind from its claws as they missed him by inches. He came up running, but the beast was already turning, far more agile than something its size should be. Jack. Blue's mental shout was filled with fear. She moved to help him, her lights pulsing brightly. "Stay back," Jack yelled, both aloud and in his thoughts. "Stick to the plan." The lead stalker charged again, but this time Jack stood his ground. He waited until the last possible moment, then threw his last packet of chemicals directly into the beast's open mouth. The resulting explosion wasn't large, but it didn't need to be. The stalker reared back, choking and spitting, its mouth filled with glowing fungus spores. In its panic, it staggered into another trap, but its massive weight snapped the ropes. Jack drew his knife, a pathetically small weapon against such a huge creature, but it was all he had left. The beast's yellow eyes locked onto him again, burning with a predator's fury. It had forgotten about Blue's people, about the other lights. Now it just wanted the human who had dared to challenge it. It charged one final time, and Jack met its rush with a warrior's cry that would have made his ancestors proud. He dove under the slashing claws, rolled between its legs, and drove his knife up into the soft spot beneath its jaw, the same weak point he'd found on the first stalker he'd fought. The blade struck true, but the beast's thrashing caught Jack with a glancing blow. He felt ribs crack as he was thrown through the air, landing hard against a tree trunk. Through blurry vision, he saw the lead stalker stumble, his knife still buried in its throat. It tried to roar, but only managed a gurgling sound before it crashed to the ground, yellow eyes dimming. The remaining night stalkers, seeing their leader fall, finally broke. They fled into the darkness, leaving their trapped packmates behind. Jack tried to stand but couldn't. Everything hurt. He could taste blood in his mouth. Blue was suddenly beside him, her crystalline hands glowing as she checked his injuries. "You did it." Her mental voice was filled with awe. "You actually did it." "We did it," Jack corrected, managing a pained smile. "Not bad, for a primitive human." Then the darkness at the edges of his vision closed in, and the last thing he saw was Blue's concerned face, her silver eyes shining with worry, as she called out to her people for help. Jack woke to the soft hum of advanced machinery. His eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the bright, sterile light of what looked like a medical bay. The walls were made of some kind of shifting crystal, and through a large window, he could see the curve of the planet below. "You're on our rescue ship." Blue's familiar mental voice touched his mind. She stood beside his bed, her crystalline form glowing with gentle blue patterns. "My people arrived shortly after you lost consciousness." Jack tried to sit up, but quickly decided against it. His ribs still hurt, but the pain was dull now. "How long was I out?" 3 planetary rotations, she answered. "Your injuries were severe, but our medical technology is advanced. You will recover fully." Around them, other crystalline beings moved about their duties, occasionally glancing at Jack with what seemed like curiosity. Their skin glowed with different colors: greens, purples, and golds. "Your research team?" Jack asked. "Safe, all of them." Blue's lights pulsed warmly. "They have been quite eager to study you. You've caused quite a stir among my people." "Oh." Jack managed to sit up this time, wincing slightly. "Let me guess. Trying to figure out how such a primitive species managed to outsmart those night stalkers." A new figure entered the room, a taller crystalline being with patterns that shimmered like a rainbow. When it spoke into Jack's mind, the mental voice carried an air of authority. "Quite the opposite," the being said. "I am Star Navigator, leader of this expedition. We are trying to understand how we could have been so wrong in our assessment of humanity." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Wrong how?" "We judged your species by your technology," Star Navigator explained. "We saw your simple tools, your basic space drives, your reliance on physical weapons, and we assumed you were lesser beings." Blue stepped forward. "But you showed us something we had forgotten in our technological advancement: the power of adaptation, of using knowledge passed down through generations, of understanding the natural world. Your defeat of the Night Stalkers," Star Navigator continued, "was not just about physical combat. You understood their psychology, used their own instincts against them, and created complex solutions with simple tools. Most importantly, you risked your life to save those who were not even of your species." Jack shrugged, then regretted it as his ribs protested. "That's just being human." "Exactly." Blue's lights pulsed with what Jack now recognized as excitement. "That is what we failed to understand. Your species' strength isn't in your technology. It's in your ability to think, adapt, and care beyond your own kind." Star Navigator moved closer. "We would like to propose a formal alliance between our peoples, not as advanced beings guiding primitive ones, but as equals. Different, but equal." "Your colony does not yet know we exist," Blue added. "We would like you to help us make first contact properly, to help both our species understand each other." Jack looked between them, then out at the planet below, the world where he'd faced down alien predators with nothing but a bow and some rope. "You know," he said with a smile, "humans have always dreamed of meeting advanced alien life. We just never expected we'd have to prove ourselves by fighting monsters first." "You did more than fight monsters," Blue said softly. You showed us that true advancement isn't just about technology. It's about wisdom, courage, and compassion. Star Navigator's lights shifted in what seemed like amusement. Though I must admit, your method of proving this was rather dramatic. Jack laughed, then held his ribs. Well, humans have always had a flair for the dramatic. But I accept. I'll help with the first contact, on one condition. Name it, Star Navigator said. Jack looked at Blue, his expression softening. That Blue here gets to be part of the diplomatic team. After all, she's the only one of your people who already knows how crazy humans can be. Blue's lights pulsed brightly, creating patterns Jack hadn't seen before. Star Navigator's mental voice carried clear amusement. I believe that can be arranged. Outside the window, the twin suns rose over the planet's horizon, marking the dawn of a new era, one where two very different species would learn from each other, brought together by a human's courage and an alien's trust. In the forests below, the night stalkers still roamed, but they now carried a newfound respect for the strange, tool-using creatures who had proven themselves to be the better predators. And somewhere in those woods, a simple wooden bough hung in a purple-leaf tree, a testament to the day when humanity proved that the simplest tools, wielded with wisdom and courage, could change the course of two civilizations.